tinkering again today. 99 F350 with 7.3 liter diesel. And we got to replace our radiator. I've got a bad leak up top. So right now I'm just draining it out for what it'll drain on its own down through the little drain cock in the bottom. But I'll show you up top here where it's leaking. It's coming out right here through a seam in the top of the radiator. For a long time I had a real slow little seep and I couldn't find it. And finally it got bad enough that I could actually see it bubbling out up top and running down. So now I at least know what I had to do. Bought the new radiator about a month ago. It's been sitting in the garage looking real pretty, but I'm finally going to get around to taking it apart. So just looking real quick, I've got to take off this jack tool assembly. I've got to take off my overflow. I've got to take off my fan shroud, which I should be able to just move forward, I think, enough to get out of the way. And then find out where underneath of my radiator, I may or may not have to take off this shield. It doesn't really look like I need to, but anyway, just going to take off what parts and pieces I need to. Obviously disconnect the main upper hose, disconnect the two lower hoses. And also I've got a new thermostat, which should sit right inside that housing, so I'll get that replaced too. But for now, let me get some stuff taken off of here and kind of see how it's starting to look. Just for the record, I do have my newest foreman here watching over the work. So far, she approves. So I'm ticking right along here. I've got everything off for the jack on the front. Got the overflow loose, but I want to disconnect the lower hose that comes up to the bottom of it. And it's hard to get wrench down in here to disconnect it from there. So I want to disconnect it from the bottom of the radiator, but the radiator is still draining. So until that radiator stops draining, I don't really want to pull that hose loose and have sort of an uncontrolled drain going. So just kind of shove that off to the side. I just took my fan shield loose, but I gotta say I'm a little concerned about this. I haven't taken any bolts loose that's really made this happen, so I'm kind of irritated that my radiator is that loose. I just feel like something's missing, like maybe there should be some brackets or something to hold it up top, but I don't see any. So anyhow, like I said, I've just got my fan shroud loose, but while the radiator's draining, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this upper hose off and see if I can't get my thermostat swapped out. Okay, had to get a little creative here. It is still slowly draining out, but I went ahead and got my upper radiator hose off, exposed my thermostat, so I'm going to go ahead and try to get that pulled out of there and swapped out. To do that, I went ahead and pulled off my serpentine belt. Probably didn't really have to, but those bolts were pretty tight. I had a hard time breaking them loose, so I actually had to swap over, had to get a big long extension here, swap over to a 3/8 drive to be able to reach down in there and pop them loose. And so to make that fit, I had to take my belt loose, but that's okay. These belts, you know, they have the one quick release, so that's, I don't mind. I actually kind of enjoy taking it loose just because it's so easy. But still letting it slowly drain out, so I'm going to try to reach down in here and pull that thermostat out and put the new one in. That thing looks pretty nasty, but even if it wasn't bad, it doesn't hurt to replace it. I don't have replacement radiator hoses. I wish I'd have bought them ahead of time, because it's definitely something I'd like to consider, swapping out my hoses and putting new ones on just so they don't blow unexpectedly. But for now, my focus is getting this radiator out, and I think just as quick as I get those lower hoses off of it, I'll be able to pull it out. So let me work on that thermostat while it's still draining a little bit, and then we'll see how it goes. Oh yeah, it was time. You know it's time when you pull the O-ring out and it comes out in pieces. So that probably would have started leaking before long. But I reached in here, got that scraped out, got this popped loose. It was kind of seized in there. Note the orientation of the bleed hole. That was very clear in my manual. So that was setting right straight back. So when I put my new thermostat in, I'll put it in there. I've got my new one right here. And I actually bought the new one with the radiator from Rock Auto. So we'll get our new one set right in there. Sets down in the hole with its own O-ring. We'll get that face kind of cleaned off there. I might go get a wire brush, clean that up a little bit, maybe get a little bit of RTV, although I shouldn't need it. Might put a little bit of RTV on there. Let me get two hands here and get this cleaned up, and then we'll see how it looks. Okay, so yeah, I just stuffed a rag down inside there, scraped off with a wire brush real quick what I could, and cleaned it up, and then pulled the rag out, set the thermostat back in. So here's our new thermostat. Again, no idea if I really needed to change it, but certainly if nothing else, the O-ring was pretty crapped out. So never hurts. It's like 20 bucks to get a new thermostat. Hopefully it'll make the truck, you know, feel a little better, stay a little cooler like it needs to, and run a little better. So anyway, sounds like we're just about dripped out here, so let's get these lower radiator hoses off and see if we can't get this radiator swapped. All right. Let's see if we can't wiggle these suckers off of here. They'll probably drip and splatter all over me, but we will go ahead and pull this one first. This is our small radiator hose that goes up for the overflow. Just trying to wiggle it loose so it doesn't all of a sudden fly off there and hopefully spray me. And actually, go ahead and close that drain over there and move my bucket over here. Oh, she's just about full. Oh yeah, glad I moved that bucket. Woo, that would have made me very upset. I'd pulled that off and dumped it all over myself. So now I'll reach up there and grab that overflow and fish it up to the top. Now, other bigger lower radiator hose. Slide that ring nice and far back. Get puppy loose. Oh yeah, she's got some weight in her too. See if I can get it off there without getting sprayed like crazy. There it is. And that, set back on the frame. We'll let that drain out for a little bit, and then I believe I ought to be able to just about pick that radiator up and haul it out of there. My foreman's working on falling asleep. My old assistant foreman here is too busy chasing lizards. He's no good to us. This one here, she's nodding off. Oh yeah, getting comfy. Alright, let's pull that radiator out. Alright, let's see if we can't haul it out of here. Oh, let's make a little space. Wire brush, don't need it. Old thermostat, don't need it. Oh, just about got a rebound. Okay, pull that fan shroud up just so it's loose and out of the way. Slide it back. And yeah, I think this sucker's gonna lift right out of here. Let's hope so. Well, aside from hanging up on everything, it's lifting, it's working on coming out. That fan shroud's catching on it. There we go. Oh, the darn drain tubes are giving me a hard time. There we go. Hey, you know what? I got a whole load of scrap metal in the back of the truck. This is going with it. Aluminum, baby. Aluminum. Big pile of aluminum. Show you guys here one other disqualifying offense. Look at this. I pulled my upper radiator hose off. That's busted all to crap. Where do you think that went? Who knows? Somewhere. It may still be inside my upper radiator hose. It may have dissolved and gone down inside the radiator. Who knows? But there you can see where that leak was at a little better. So anyway, gonna throw this up in the back of the truck. We got a whole pile of scrap metal in there, and then we'll put the new one in and show you the reverse. Look at that. Worthless. Foreman. What are you gonna do with them? All right, let's set this back up here. Get my new radiator and we'll slide it in. Now looky here. Foreman got an upgrade. Still sleeping on the job, but at least she's more comfortable now. So here's my new radiator. I got this online through Rock Auto. I don't know anything about that brand, TYC or whatever it is, but anyway, gonna slide out of the box here and see if we can't slide it up into the truck. I kind of wonder, I'm still not comfortable with the way that radiator was so loose in there. and I wonder if maybe that didn't contribute to the failure, just excessive vibration. The manual says something about having to take loose the radiator insulators, but I don't have those. So I'm going to see about maybe putting some extra support in there. So here she is in all her glory. Now something to note, this one does have these two drains on the bottom there, and this one here. Those are actually for you to have from the factory. There were intercooler lines that ran from the transmission, oil cooler lines. Now this truck has an aftermarket oil cooler on it, so it has an independent little radiator. So it doesn't use those, but that's fine. You don't have to plug those off, you don't have to do anything, because those are not in contact with any of the coolant, so if nothing flows through there, it doesn't matter. So you just slide it in and just leave those the way they are. Don't have to get special plugs or nothing in them. So try to guide this baby down in there best we can. Deep hole. Okay, boys, down she goes. That's it. In and down. Move our fan shroud back. Put it back on there. If you can, anyway. I'll figure out what it's hung up on. Okay. Now, there were two bolts here. We held our fan shroud on. I'm just going to get those started. Just enough that they're not so loose. I think yeah, okay. It's got little special clips on there. Ready to accept those fan shroud bolts. We're just going to put those on there for right now, just kind of loose, just to hold that fan shroud in place so it's not flopping around so much. There we go. Okay. Let's go back downstairs. Okay, went ahead and snaked my lower line back in through my overflow line. So now we'll just put our upper line on here, lower line on here. Sorry for the kids screaming, although I'm really not sorry. But I know it can get a little annoying to hear them in the background if you're not a kid person. But I don't care. Okay, got that one on. That one on. And yeah, again, I'd like to replace these hoses. They feel pretty good still. They're not real hard and brittle, but it would be good maintenance to replace them. So those two on. We'll go up top, get our overflow back on, get the hoses connected, get the overflow bolted back down, and then we'll hook up our upper radiator hose and we're done. Just like that. So this flange is pretty well stuck to the hose, and I was in the process of prying it off, and then I realized why, because I'm just going to put the same hose back on it. So I really would like to replace this hose. Yes, I must replace this hose. I'm not going to put that back on the truck. I don't know if that happened while I was taking it off or what. I've never noticed that before, but yeah, never mind. I'm going to replace that hose. Anyway, let's get that fixed and then we'll get rolling again. So how's this for skill? I've actually got a buddy. He's always telling me he wants to help, do anything he can to help. He's an old retired fella. And so I needed that hose. I called him, I said, man, I need a hot shot. I'm in a bind. And it just so happened he's coming right by the auto parts store. So he's gonna duck in, pick me up that hose, hopefully have it here about 30 minutes or so. But what I've been doing is going through this adapter. That hose was just rusted to the adapter basically. So I had to literally pry it apart, get it off there. And now I'm going through and just kind of scraping this and doing the best I can to kind of clean it up. It's got a lot of debris, and it really shouldn't matter because the coolant doesn't really flow through this area. The inside of the hose is nice and inside the adapter is nice and clean, but just trying to clean that up as best I can to make sure I get a real good seal when I put that new hose back on it. So hopefully I get that hose here in the next, few minutes, maybe an hour, whatever it takes him. And then we'll get her slapped back together. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and get the overflow and everything set back on there so I'm ready. So when I get that hose, that's the last thing I'll have to do. Might get a little hairy here, folks. My foreman's waking up, grouchy. Of course, the foreman, that's the boss for you, always just yelling at you. Got this fitting cleaned up. Gonna go ahead and get it reinstalled, and then when I get that new hose, we'll be able to just go ahead and put the hose on. So, just down in here. Uh-oh, of course, there we go. Screw on the ground, man down, find that. It's never good. Absolute miracle I didn't drop that in the bucket. I got them all fussing now. Oh goodness. Well, here, I won't make you guys listen to crying babies. Just gonna get those 3 screws put back in there and get that adapter back on. No fighting. Yeah, so anyway, I figured out why my radiator seems so wobbly, and I was telling you guys I was concerned. I was like, man, this thing's not in there at all, but it's actually these 2 upper brackets here that hold the tire tools on that also hold the radiator. So you can see there's this little rubber grommet. So you can see now with that in, I can't wiggle that radiator. So it actually is good and solid. It just kind of had me scared. But anyway, so we're waiting on that hose. Just as soon as it gets here, we'll get it slapped on. But I'm actually going to go ahead and start topping off my coolant now, just so I can kind of get things cleaned up, wrapped up, get my tools picked up. And yeah, as soon as that gets here, we'll get her slapped on. Okay, just got my new hose in here, got my clamps moved over to it. So now we'll reach down in here, see if we can't fight it on there.
Put a little bit of Vaseline on it.
Oh, you don't need it. You just got to get it started to where it doesn't wrinkle on itself. That's on there. And the top side, that's on there.
That's a new radiator too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's what I was working on.
There he goes.
It's not getting that dark yet, honey. It's much easier when you can work on top of them like this. Boom.
Beautiful.
There we go. Set that serpentine belt back on. Fill her up.